Hey there, it is power session time. I will explain my little costume in a moment. I am wearing it for just about one purpose and one purpose only, and that is for the person that sent it to me yesterday. There she is. You're welcome. I am not keeping this on for the whole thing. Yeah, Miriam's excited. She actually sent this to me yesterday. I have no idea how. I'm thinking it's some kind of Uber delivery service or something, because someone went to a local grocery store here and bought it and then brought it to me here at my office yesterday. So same day delivery somehow. So anyway, I'd love to figure out how that happened so that I can be aware of it. Anyway, this eye patch is purely because I have I don't even remember what it's called, but it's a hemorrhage in my left eye. So look away if you are a little skittish or squeamish. Right here, my eye got scratched, and so it's not. Oh, actually, my eyeball didn't, but there was a hemorrhage in the vascularity that's between the really thin coat of your eyeball and the main part of your eyeball. And so when that gets disrupted or whatever, say it while you're wearing it. It ends up looking pretty gnarly because it's only a clear coat between there and your eyeball, so it looks way worse than it is. It's a little uncomfortable because when I walk past people, they kind of do this. So, which I don't need to give people another reason to stare at me. But anyway, I'm told in 7 to 10 days it'll go away. I saw the eye doctor this morning just to make sure there wasn't any dangerous pressure on my eye or anything, any damage that I should be worried about with my vision and everything. So hopefully that's not aggressively distracting, but thanks for the eye patch, Miriam. It's hilarious. In fact, okay, I'll do this for you because I know of all people, you'll appreciate this. So it's time. So we're live. Okay, you're welcome. All right, we are live, and it is time to get going today on our power session. Last week, if you missed it, definitely go back. I got so many great messages and follow-ups from people that were able to make real tangible breakthroughs from being able to shift their perspective on sales, as we were talking about it last week, in terms of how pure it is. It's the highest form of connection in terms of exchanging value. And I've had some more conversations, some deeper conversations with it with some people that have been really fun, because we work with a lot of entrepreneurs that are in transformational businesses. Like they want to transform someone's life, and whether it's in their financial services life or in their health life or their fitness life or in their real estate investing life or whatever it is, they want to create transformation. And one of the challenges is that for a lot of us, especially with higher levels of empathy and intuition, which we know is about 84% of you, of all the people that have ever taken the Habit Finder, have very high levels, naturally high levels. We all have capacity to have high levels of empathy and intuition if we choose to build the habits around it that will support it. But about close to 85% of us have naturally very high levels of empathy and intuition, and it can create a oil and water combination between transformational and transactional. It'll create an either or. Love the transformational part, hate the transactional part. But no, we need the transactional part to be able to keep doing the transformational part, and that it's an indicator of this and that, and we get into all these intellectual arguments in our mind or with other people around it. But really what we were talking about last week is to lay a foundation, a platform for being able to allow transformational and transactional to coexist, to collaborate, to feed each other. And the example I love to give is Mother Teresa. I'm telling people that Mother Teresa was all about the money. She was all about that blang, okay? She raised over $114 million to do what she did. She was relentless and unapologetic in terms of money and the transactions required to create the transformations in the gutters of Calcutta that she made on this world with her example. So a really great example of someone who found transformational and transactional and allowed them to coexist. Pay really close attention to your language, because a lot of us want income, but we're not willing to tell money to come in so that we can have income, where we would rather just hope that it magically arrives because we're doing the right things, when in fact money is often attracted to energy, and it will magnify what's already inside of us. And if what's inside of us is conflict, money will magnify that conflict, and it'll not show up because we're chasing it, or it'll show up in limited quantities because we're not embracing it. So finding that coexistence is super important. This week, okay. Oh, Posadas is saying accident with a straw. Totally understands. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing your run-in with a straw, Posadas, because mine wasn't that fantastic either. I had some people commenting on Facebook like, hey, trying to lift 500 pounds or get in a fight with someone. I was like, those would have been really cool options for having an eye that looks this funky right now. But they weren't. It was, I'm 99% sure, because I didn't notice it after it happened. It was my wife noticed it later that morning. Pretty sure that I was drying off after a shower, and I get seasonal allergies a little bit. And so I think I just rubbed my eyes a little too hard with the towel, and, got through and messed up. And we were also snowmobiling all weekend at high altitude, and an amazing time. I'm putting a little highlight video together of that, and shout out to Amy and Carl, who I just had an amazing time with at the cabin. By the way, when you see that come out, any of you that are in these power sessions, or any of you that know couples, especially entrepreneurial couples, and that could be just one person in the relationship is entrepreneurial, even more important when both are entrepreneurial. We've found over the last decade or more that a lot of entrepreneurial couples, their relationships are good, but as they're looking to stretch and grow as entrepreneurs and in personal development, sometimes it can create a little bit of imbalance in certain areas. And the worst thing you can do when your business is so dependent on you as an entrepreneur, your creativity, your energy, the worst thing you can do is just learn how to just get by in your relationship. Because it's really good here, but this one part is usually what we run into. But that one part can bleed into energy that is not productive and that is not serving your creativity and serving your energy to be able to be inspired. Because pretty good is not good enough for the inspired and worthy dreams that we're hearing from you all. And one of the great ways that we take that on is we don't just coach individually, we'll coach with a couple. And there might be some sessions where it's both of them, some where it's one or the other. It just depends on what kind of rhythm is going to serve them best. And one of our favorite ways, the most effective way, is to kick off the coaching engagement with a weekend up at our cabin. In the wintertime, we go snowmobiling, and we had, our guide said it was probably the best day he's seen in 2 years. Just tons of powder, sun shining. Then we spend time in the cabin, which is just an incredible environment, just very comfortable, very relaxing. We were kind of in jammies most of the day, just lounging around. And we go into our office and spend a good part of one of the days there just talking through what's going on in the relationship, what's going on in the business, and how to find that partnership, that equal, contributing, honoring partnership. Because if one of you are entrepreneurial or both of you are entrepreneurial, you are in a partnership on more levels than just your relationship. And to be able to take that on is extraordinary. So if any of you, yes, Crystal, you missed the eye story. It wasn't that great. I just scratched my eye with a towel. And so I had an eye patch on at the beginning of this, in this particular session. So, okay. Anyway, real quick. Okay. And I know there's a little bit of a delay, so be patient with me while I wait for anything to come through. Does anyone have any questions from last week's session? Any questions from exchanging value and sales, or anything that you could put in the chat to share a little bit about your breakthrough or shift in perspective, and possibly even some ways it changed your activities or even your results since the last power session? I would love to hear from you in the chat in terms of what you got from last week and how you're using it. Would be fantastic. So, but again, bear with me, because I do want to make sure that I'm able to see anything that comes through on that, and then we'll dive into today's topic. Super excited about. So got some likes, some good, okay. And I know several of you already commented or messaged me directly, so I appreciate that. Actually, a lot of you did, which was awesome. Miriam said, how much time and energy to put into building connections that are not income producing? Okay, great question. So how to determine the time and energy to put into building connections that are not income producing? First of all, my immediate response to that, for you and anyone else wondering that, is that connections criteria should never be whether they're income producing or not. When it's early on, it's very natural for us to categorize and to label types of connections, especially if we're just getting into a business that requires us to be social on some level, and before getting in that business, we weren't necessarily what we consider social. We know that over 80% of network marketers, direct selling companies, are filled with introverts. Over 80% are introverts. And so it isn't that they don't know how to connect. It's just now that they're being told to do it on a much larger scale. And the challenge is we start creating unnecessary qualifiers for connection. There are benefits to using your opportunity, your income producing opportunities, to motivate you to get out there and connect. But when you're actually executing connection, it's something you're going to want to become, which when that happens means connection will happen more naturally. You'll be more open to going places that put you around people you don't know. Not so that you can be the life of the party. You don't ever want to convert from being an introvert to being an extrovert, okay? Unless for some reason that's your calling and that's what you want to focus on, sure. But most introverts sabotage themselves the most by trying to be extroverts. Going around multiple people that you don't know doesn't mean you need to get to know all of them. One of the great things about introverts is they're naturally drawn to more intimate connection, more one-to-one, more loyalty-based, more depth kind of space than necessarily having a giant collection of friends. But a giant collection of friends can be done as an introvert if we're willing to just connect and create consistent, frequent experiences that can allow us to collect friends. Because when our goal is to collect friends, it's not necessarily that we need to collect all of them this week, okay? Or you need to collect everyone in the room that you're in at a networking meeting. No, 1 or 2 great connections are going to outdo 100 good conversations. I'll say that one more time. 1 or 2 great connections are going to outperform in your life 100 good conversations. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. And here's why, Miriam, coming back to your question, you don't want to be overly concerned with connections that are not income producing. Because when we are naturally connecting, when we're building a baseline of connection, which is the ante to the game, that's the ticket to get on the field. So we can't necessarily start talking game strategy when all we're doing is taking care of actually showing up. That's the first piece of connection. We want to be careful that we don't start getting into pre-qualifiers prematurely. Because, and I could ask Miriam this, and I already know the answer to, as well as with a bunch of other people, how often have we connected with someone that we never would have thought would have been income producing, and then 6 months later, a year later, 5 years later, they end up being a great contact for a referral or another relationship, or they themselves directly impact your income producing activities. That's why I was talking about 1 or 2 great connections will outperform 100 good conversations, is because performance is measured on multiple dimensions. And what's the likelihood if you naturally connect and it's not something that you have to force, and so which is oftentimes what creates the qualifiers, is this income producing or is not? What happens is we get very systemic, we get very tactical and strategic, and for those 80+% that are introverts, it's offensive to how they're built. It's difficult to feel like I'm leveraging someone for income, even though I know what I am supposed to be doing as an indicator that I'm doing that effectively. We want to start with building the foundation of connection without it having any qualifiers. And once we've done that, it becomes more available to us to do with more clarity, which leads to doing it with greater speed, which leads to doing it with greater frequency and consistency. And when that starts to happen, then we can start to more naturally create the efficiencies and the focus and clarity that we want to have, so that it's not just about, and again, let me Zach Morris time out for a second, okay? Step back from this for just a moment. I'll literally step back from this for just a second. I want to make sure you're not hearing me as saying, don't worry about the value of the relationships you're talking to in terms of the results they can create. I'm not saying don't pay attention to who you're spending your time with. I'm not saying don't worry about whether the people you're spending time with leads to income production. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm speaking to is simply some of the biases that your mind operates with. I want you to create the ante to the game, the foundation of connection, so that you can more effectively and with greater clarity make determinations about the connections and relationships you're creating. So it's not that asking the question of spending time with people that are or are not income producing. If they're a person, they have a potential. If you have a great service or a great product, everyone has potential to be income producing. But you will rob yourself of the full potential of that income production if a couple of things happen. And this is what I was trying to go against the grain on, Miriam and anyone else in this space, is number one, when we're over-focused on income production rather than connection first, then we'll oftentimes play go fish in our conversations with people. We'll walk up and be like, so, hey, have you ever thought about, losing weight? And they say, go fish. And suddenly we have nothing to connect on. Or have you ever thought about investing in real estate or doing this? Go fish. Oh, crap. Now I have to go back to the drawing pile to try and create a conversation with somebody else. So we want to make sure that when we consider connection, that opportunities to connect are everywhere. And we're going to want to be more naturally in alignment with those opportunities. Now, that doesn't mean you need to spend an hour and a half with the person who checked you out at the grocery store because I told you were supposed to connect with everyone. The amount of time we spend is still important, but it's secondary to creating a consistent foundation of connection. Let me put it to you this way. Mandino said that love, and remember, he's talking about agape love. Love is the greatest secret of success in all ventures. And he actually went on to say that with love alone, I can succeed. Without it, I'm just a peddler in the marketplace. Here's where people can go wrong, where people can misinterpret this principle. Because even if they've never heard this quote, the misinterpretation I'm about to lay out happens all the time. And that is that they get focused on the fact that alone must mean the exclusion of everything else. Meaning I just need to care about people. I just need to love people, and everything else just happens magically with no intention or awareness or structure or systems. That's not what Mandino was talking about. If we will start with love, agape love, which we talked about last week, is the highest form of love that there is, and it is the love that is not emotionally driven. It's the love, agape is most closely associated with, for me, the term accuracy. So, which is beautiful, because then if you love someone, it's because you see them or you want to see them accurately. If you don't love someone, you don't see them or you don't want to see them accurately. As simple as that. Everything else is just preference and bias and even prejudice, which are all layers of just not seeing someone accurately. That's why oftentimes agape over the years has become associated with God's love, because what's more accurate than that? Okay. So love, with love alone, it does not mean the exclusion of everything else. What it means is that if I have love, okay, numero uno, it is the top priority, it is my focus, that everything else will fall into alignment in its proper order. We do not exclude any of these things. We do not exclude our roles as a parent or as a spouse or as a business owner, whatever the case is. We do not exclude the structure or systems of our business. We do not exclude strategy. We do not exclude skill sets and everything else. All of this falls into alignment in its proper order when we start here. So that's why I wanted to obliterate this whole idea that, well, I don't do sales. We don't do sales. Because that's someone who believes that I just need to love them and exclude everything else. I don't need any intention. I don't need any structure. I don't need any of that as long as I love people, which is like rowing a boat with one oar. You just kind of go in circles. And then every once in a while reconnect it. Well, this just feels good because this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to love people. We're supposed to love people first with agape love, seeking accuracy, so that, not either or, so that everything else can fall into alignment. Okay? Okay, just checking the chat. So Crystal just said, when I try to be strategic, I'm awkward. That often comes from believing that we have some switch in us. I'm going to do my best to draw a light switch here. Okay. That took way too much time for how bad it turned out. That, okay, now I'm being strategic. Boom. Now I'm loving them. Boom. Now I'm being strategic. Boom. And we get fatigued. We get awkward. We feel like we're being, here's the biggest challenge, we're being duplicitous. The challenge of being duplicitous, meaning double-minded, is we feel like we're being two people. And if we're introverted or we're extroverted and have very high levels of empathy and intuition naturally, we become very sensitive to this. Being duplicitous becomes offensive. And so, Crystal, one of the reasons that why a lot of us have challenges being strategic and loving people is because we believe they're two different switches. But if we understand what Og was talking about, what real love is, which we dove into deep last week. I just did it with the disguise of sales, which is what I mentioned, the highest form of connection. In other words, the highest form of an expression of love is that exchange of value, is sales. Not the transactional part, not just the transformational part, but all of it in its proper order. So being strategic with someone, Crystal, becomes part of the process. If I skipped any of the process and I went from love right to strategy, okay, if I went right from wanting to care about them and felt like I flipped the switch right to strategy, rather than allowed it to progress naturally, which we teach our clients in a process called intrinsic validation, which is a 5-step process to being able to align this. In fact, before we even teach those 5 steps, we make sure that there's a foundation built on 5 other principles that allow those steps to work. And the number one step in that foundation is agape love. So Crystal, if you're feeling awkward and strategic, start to be aware of how this switch is flipping rather than allowing love to lead to the strategy. Because love leading to strategy is intuition. When love just flips a switch to strategy, it feels like manipulation. So what we want to do is allow our love to intuitively lead us to strategy, which those of you going, well, how do we do that? Well, you need to start trying to do it first, which is what we're going to talk about today in terms of actual physical creation is really critical. But when we jump from love to strategy, like flipping the switch, then it feels manipulative in the worst way. It feels like this part of us was playing pretend because now the strategic part of us has shown up and we feel double-minded, which is, it's not true. That's not the case. It's just noise. Okay. Let's see here. Daniela says, I'm going out on a limb here, but I don't want to spend my time trying to see a particular person accurately any longer. I have tried and used so much emotional energy trying to understand to my detriment. I still love them. I'm just done working the relationship. Great comment, because accuracy, okay, and Daniela, fantastic point to bring up, okay? Daniela's been working with me for a couple of years, really high level and deep individual and really challenged me in a lot of ways that I appreciate. And so bringing this up, I mean, accuracy means clarity. It does not, I repeat, it does not mean, and this is where people's resistance to love and business comes, it does not mean a warm, fuzzy blanket, a WFB. Love is not a WFB. You seek clarity and accuracy, not just so that you can connect, but so you can be clear around those who are not honoring that connection. Because here, this feels like a really important place to go, so I'm going to go here as soon as I can find my eraser. Here it is. Okay. We got a lot of noise on here, so let me clear the landscape. Because Daniela just brought up a really critical point, which is why a lot of introverts create toxic and damaging relationships that they don't know how to get out of. Extroverts do it too. They're not unique to that. But the challenge is every single person has a WOR, a wall of resistance. Everybody does. Okay? So here's your world. Here's their world. Every single person has a wall of resistance. So when you interact with them, to some degree, and usually if they don't know you higher than others, you are running into their wall. That's all it is. Oh, that person's a jerk. No, their wall's a jerk. That person doesn't care. No, their wall doesn't care. That person's lazy or entitled. And it can even be assumptions about that person's happy. That person's satisfied. But this happens when we assume that this wall is actually them. What happens is we're listening more with our ears and our eyes than we are with our heart, our intuition. Heart is a great symbol of that intuitive, worthy, dreaming, inspired space. And so if we're listening more with our eyes especially, and then our ears, and then we're usually allowing those to dictate our heart, we're going backwards in terms of being able to see them accurately. And we're also, because our eyes and ears only see the wall of resistance, making a lot of assumptions about them that isn't fair. So I'm asking you to bring agape love into this equation, which is roughly translated as a heightened, so you can see over the wall, a heightened level of awareness, so that you can give an opportunity to notice things about them rather than their wall. And then if you're able to connect with those things that you notice, guess what happens? The wall comes down, and we know that there's 40% minimum cooperation and productivity that comes pouring out to you if you can bring that wall down. But to Daniela's point, not everyone wants to bring their wall down. No matter how good you are with agape love, with intrinsic validation, it is not a skeleton key. It's not a universal cheat code to get everybody's wall down. But we want to understand, because what you were talking about, Daniela, is the emotional energy it takes to feel like we're connecting with this. And so why isn't the wall coming down? Or is the wall down? This is exhausting. No, the agape, okay, which remember is accuracy and clarity, and is not a WFB. It is not a warm fuzzy blanket, which means if they don't want to bring their wall down, quit running your head into it. Just stop. But how often do we run into someone's wall and we use one of these, how we experience their wall, to rationalize our frustration? Oh, they're just a jerk. Because that kind of makes us feel better for a second. Oh, they just don't care. Oh, they're lazy. They don't really want it. They're not committed. Because all we did was interact with their wall. Well, if we can get up here and notice that that's just their wall, and they're not willing to bring it down, we honor them by just leaving it alone. That's okay. They're not ready for this, or this isn't right for them. I'm not the person who gets to determine that 100% of the time. Just because my intuition says that what I have to offer can really benefit them, it may not be the right time. Or it might just make them even more frustrated or more accountable than they need to be right now. Because right now they need their wall. And the only person who can determine whether they need their wall more than the value you have to offer is them. So we walk away. But we don't walk away, oh, they're just whatever. We don't walk away with rational explanations of an irrational response to their wall. We walk away with peace. We end relationships with confidence because we've practiced agape love properly. And so we know that, for example, an amazing book, if any of you have toxic relationships in your life and you're not quite sure how to handle them, especially when they're super close, like a parent or a sibling or someone else that you see constantly, the book Necessary Endings. Necessary Endings takes you through this amazing process of understanding when this wall doesn't come down, how to make sure that you don't keep banging your head against it, okay? or you don't climb up here to see, and then they won't bring the wall down, so we jump off and hurt ourselves on the way down in the relationship. And it's harder and harder the longer we've been interacting with this person's wall, because we've even started to buy in that this is them, that these two are merged. And doing this has another really nice reciprocal effect. It allows us to be able to understand our own wall as well, and where people's frustration might come from, where misunderstanding might come from. Because we found the entrepreneurs we work with, this is anecdotal, but probably are about 25, depending on the measurements and the assessment, but I'm going to be a little conservative here, are about 25% as clear as they think they are with people. So if you are 25% as clear with someone as you think you are, you might understand why you can get frustrated with someone, why you're wasting energy, because it's like trying to get to 100%, but you're using a diluted solution for it. So it takes way more than you ever realize, but it's 25% as clear as you think you are. So you think you're giving clearer instructions. You think you're offering a friendlier hand than the way they're experiencing it. And that's not an accusation against you. That's an opportunity to trust this process a little bit more. And it starts with recognizing that everybody has a wall. Everybody does. These walls do so much damage, the ones we build up and the ones we run into from other people. Because we can, as Mandino said in Scroll 2, muscle can split a shield and even destroy life. There are plenty of people, depending on our attitude and our relentless drive, where we can bash over their wall. Other of us show up like the Trojan horse, where we're hiding in it and try to get them to bring it into their space, and then we jump out, gotcha! Or we try to sneak around the back door. We try to tunnel under the wall, all to no avail, because boom, we get booted back out and we're still running into the wall again. But again, there's such a critical point. In fact, it kind of took us on a really important tangent, Daniela, that agape is accuracy and clarity. It's to know when someone is unwilling to bring their wall down. And it's also to know that that's not about us. Because the reason we need to call them a jerk, the reason we need to say they're not committed or they're entitled or whatever, is to make us feel better. But if we really did this, we don't need to feel better, because we already feel great, because we've got that foundation of connection. Hopefully that was worth the tangent. Okay? Totally, Lisa. People remember how you made them feel. Critical. This is how we understand that at a much deeper level. Drama triangle. Amen. No kidding. Too much thinking of your double-minded, which happens so more often, because oftentimes the other mind is an unconscious secret desire or real intention. And so we feel double-minded without even being conscious that it's happening, which is where we just, why do I feel so awkward right now? This should be such an easier conversation. This isn't how I saw it going in my head. So agape love could mean we need to see past those aggravating qualities of a person that they're throwing out to protect themselves and see the person. Yes, but that person can still be aggravating, not perfect. Their wall is aggravating, okay? Oftentimes, aggravation comes from how we think people should show up and how they actually do. If we're showing up to connect, if we're showing up to understand them, to find good in them, aggravation should at the very least be minimized. But that doesn't mean their wall won't aggravate you, that you need to keep practicing this to get better at that. I guess we find our strategy or truth in the work. Yes, Rosanna, amen. And we'll talk about that. I'll kind of cap off this whole conversation with a summary of what I wanted to make sure you go away with in this power session. See here. When they're ready, absolutely. And when you can do that authentically, when they're ready, you can understand that authentically. It starts to, it's like getting to exhale with people. Suddenly they don't get to you. Og talks about that in Scroll 2. When it's beautiful. I want to make sure you guys hear this. When he goes in to say, talks about using it as his shield. But how will I react to the actions of others? With love. For just as love is my weapon to open the hearts of men, to bring their wall down, Love is also my shield to repulse the arrows of hate and the spears of anger. So we have the shield, but then he goes on. He doesn't leave it at that. My new adversity and discouragement will beat against my new shield and become as the softest of rains. My shield will protect me in the marketplace in new ways, in people we don't understand, because no matter how aware of the wall we become, when we start over with someone we don't know, it's really easy to forget about their wall of resistance and to make an assumption and to listen with our ears and our eyes way more than we are with our heart, and which is how we get to hear what someone really means, not just what they're saying. So my shield will protect me in the marketplace and sustain me when I am alone. It will uplift me in moments of despair, yet it will calm me in times of exaltation. It will become stronger and more protective with use. So it's becoming stronger and more protective, which means I should use it more, and it should work even better. But then Og says something so powerful: until one day I'll cast it aside. What? It just became stronger and better and more effective. Why would I cast it aside? Goes on to say, I will cast it aside and walk unencumbered, Daniela, unencumbered among all manners of men. And when I do, my name will be raised high on the pyramid of life. Too often, we haven't become intrinsic validators. We may have tried the steps, had some great experiences. We built up our shield, but we may have cast it aside prematurely. And then we go back to dodging and ducking and weaving with other people, which is exhausting to do that. We needed the shield for a reason. So we're not sitting there doing this the whole time, because that's really tiring when we're dealing with so many people's walls and trying to figure out. It does take more energy to be able to notice. But eventually, Og gives us the promise that eventually it'll become so strong and so protective, it's almost like it becomes a part of us. And we cast it aside and we walk unencumbered. Unencumbered, meaning it doesn't affect us the way it used to. Because our first, second, and third goal is to see someone accurately and with clarity. Not to need to be right. It's not that kind of accuracy. Okay, because I know that over 92% of you on this call have a major challenge needing to be right. And someday when I get super brave, we'll talk about that on here. Just kidding. We'll probably talk about it. So, oh, very cool. Stephanie was talking about the work she does with delinquent juveniles. Talk about a misunderstood population. Yeah, 40% resistance, 25% clarity. That's a tough combination. But here, understand this, Miriam, and anybody else thinking the same thing. Holy crap, 40% resistance minimum, 25% clarity. You take this 25, and these numbers are arbitrary, so grab the principle behind this. You take this 25 to 30, 31.72%, and huge shifts occur. You take this 40% withholding and you get 10% of that more, huge shifts occur. And oftentimes, because 40% is the minimum, you're usually dealing with people in direct selling and network marketing with people with walls way higher, especially today. So need to watch again, came in late. Traffic, no worries. How about a 42-year marriage? 100%. Absolutely. My parents are in San Diego right now celebrating their 44th wedding anniversary. Because being able to teach the principles of a solid relationship has less to do with how long you've been in the relationship and more to do with the solid principles that feed it. Oftentimes at 42 years, there's going to be so many great things to build on, to take it from great to even better, or from good to better to great. So yeah, in terms of jumping in late, in terms of working with couples, just wanted to revisit that. Super helpful. Thank you, Daniela. And thank you so much for making such a solid point that I feel really needed to be hit on hard today. Need to care enough to know what's going on and concerned enough to do something about it. Absolutely. And concerned enough to do something about it, you're going to want to check your habit finder, especially in the myself section, to make sure that doing something about it isn't to compensate for challenges in your self-esteem. Because if it is, you're at tremendous risk of doing something about it at the sacrifice of your own well-being, which is not clear and not accurate. Because agape love isn't just you, it's agape love for me, myself too, which is super critical. We can knock on their walls, but they still have the choice to open the door, and realizing that when the wall doesn't come down or the door doesn't open, it's not a reflection on us if we showed up making it about them. And we can find the clarity and the accuracy to be able to move on to the next door without needing to, and all that kind of energy. What about when that person is sabotaging your efforts? How do you stop being defensive? First of all, Jeanette, that's going to be one of the hardest things that you do. That's going to be really high level intrinsic validation, which is finding good in that person. Sometimes, not a lot of times, sabotage is misinterpreted. A lot of times, communication, that lack of clarity, is interpreted as adversarial. So you're going to want to trust this process. And if it's something consistent in your life, then we may want to connect offline and talk about a deeper process in coaching or something else that we can offer to be able to go deeper into that, especially if it's impacting all areas of your life: productivity, business, income, relationships, all that stuff. That's a tricky one to take on. And that's why we don't do huge couple retreats anymore, where we bring tons of couples up at the same time. We might do one in the future where we bring 5 couples together, but it'll be more of a mastermind. There'll be entrepreneurial couples, and we'll spend 3 or 4 days together diving into relationships, planning your business out better, getting really deep, so that everyone comes away from that having a blast. We'll do a lot of really fun things. We've talked about doing something like that in the next year. We can only have 5 or 6 couples up to all have their own master suite. But anyway, I digress. Jeanette, the reason we went to all of our consistent retreats now just being one couple is so we can get deep enough to really touch on the specific application and implementation of a principle like intrinsic validation into something as difficult as feeling like someone's sabotaging, and we naturally get defensive around it. It's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of perspective. And you want to make sure when you are dealing with that person and that relationship that you're at a high level of capacity. Meaning, don't do it after a long day of traveling or talking to people and stepping out of your comfort zone, because you're going to be fatigued. Your capacity isn't going to be as high. And with a lot of productive reflection to prepare yourself to trust that whatever you're feeling in that moment is not what you're going to act on, but the commitment you're making is what you're going to act on. And that's a lot of what we spend our time on at the cabin with couples and relationships, which doesn't just apply to their relationship with each other. It applies to every relationship in their life, which is what makes it so incredibly powerful. So when we no longer need the shield, that means we are highly emotionally intelligent and live above the line. Certainly. Keep in mind, Jen, I know you know this, but keep in mind that our objective should never be to be above the line permanently. I got to speak in Orlando, and then Jim Dethmer spoke at an event, who wrote 15 Laws of Conscious Leadership, where it talks about living above the line. And so as soon as I heard he was speaking at the event that was right after the one I spoke at, I was so relieved, because we're in so alignment with him in that book. And he talked about how the goal wasn't to be above the line all the time. It was to be aware of where we actually are. Are we above the line right now? Okay, great. So what can I focus on to allow myself to stay here? Am I above the line right now? We're not going to go, oh crap, I'm below the line. Oh crap, I'm so stupid. I need to beat myself up to get back above the line, which then doesn't work. It's just being aware that you're there. So when we're able to cast our shield aside and walk unencumbered, that's going to be because we have the tools to get into that space more often. We have the opportunity to be able to cast our shield away more often and keep it casted away for longer periods of time. I don't believe in this life we'll get to the point where we can embody agape love or intrinsic validation 100% of the time at 100% capacity. It's just not humanly possible. So part of the mercy, or a common term we hear, is the grace that you'll give yourself, is celebrating the fact that now you're gaining the tools to get into that space and to stay there longer. So that when you aren't there, it's not a pity party or a pissy party about not being there. It's actually a celebration of, I was there. So now I just need to reverse engineer the tools that I've been given to get back there again. That's joy in the journey. Where we rob ourselves of joy in the journey is getting there, then having life pull a rug out from under us or knock us down, and just spending way too much energy angry that we're not there anymore, rather than pouring that energy into the awareness, the clarity of where we are, and being excited to get back there again. The most successful people I know fall in love with getting back there, not how long they can stay there, okay? Or how permanently they can stay there. Number one cause of self-sabotaging dialogue is unmet expectations, and that's a big one. We experience something amazing, and somehow we convince ourselves unconsciously that we should be able to experience that all the time, every day, if I just blank, which then becomes an indictment and beat the crap out of ourselves, and then we never get to fall in love with the journey, which is getting back there, and having fun with figuring out how long we can stay there. The whole "this too shall pass." This too shall pass for good, this too shall pass for bad, and being able to appreciate the balance. Balance doesn't come from finding this place where we can totally stay still. Don't move because my life is balanced right now. I don't want to move a muscle because then I'll be out. Is that living? Would that be very exciting? But that's what we convince ourselves balance is. And then we fly off the rails, and now we just spend way too much time beating ourselves up for not being able to sustain it. No, balance is more like those balance boards with the cylinders and the skateboard top kind of thing on it, where you're constantly going like this. This is joy in the journey. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I got it. Yes. Oh, okay. I fell. No problem. Let's do this again. That's how we want to be living. Oh, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Sweet. I can cast my shield aside. Oh, wow, this is amazing. This is what Mandino was talking about. But then, boom, an arrow we weren't ready for, that we weren't used to having fired at us, hits us. Oh, crap, that hurt. Okay, no problem. I'm going to pick my shield back up again, get back into balance, back into action. I'm gonna love that person. I need the protection right now. Oh, yeah. And then we're feeling pretty good, and we can cast it aside again. And then another arrow hits us that we weren't ready for. And where the challenge is where we go, okay, I need to brace for that arrow. I need to be ready for that worst case scenario. I'm going to over worry, and I'm going to create false peace, which is really just relief that life wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, or at least it's not as bad as theirs. And at least I'm not that person, or I wish I was that person. And then we start flip-flopping all over the place. We're below the line, like we were trying to avoid. We ended up creating a self-fulfilling prophecy on it. So don't ever think that this is where you want to live. Totally still. Don't move. Okay, because that's not joy. It's not fun. Okay, but it's also not whoop and totally fly off the rails over here, and then whoop, totally fly off the rails over here, which is what a lot of us are doing. Call it rubber banding. We stretch out over here and then go, oh, this isn't working. So we fly all the way over to the other side of the scale, and we miss that nice rhythm of balance, which is what we really want to create in life. Yes, yeah, we're not built to connect with everyone because it's a two-way road. That's rather selfish to assume that you have some kind of magical power to overcome other people's noise and other people's desire to avoid and escape. And no, that's not honoring another person. That's a big part of connection. Trust the process. Yes. Amen. Just staying below the line less often, getting back above it quicker. Yes, I'm really good at getting back there. It is totally a good thing. Love that share. So grateful for these power sessions. So thank you, Lisa. Location. It's awesome. Thank you. Marilyn, great perspective. Been thinking about how people live above the line all the time and feeling bad about it, not being able to do it. Another important thing, Marilyn and anyone else that have been in that comparison trap, if you have a copy of the Observer's Chair, which is probably, like, in terms of practical application for a lot of you, probably one of the greatest books we've got. To say at the beginning of your life goes really deep, but the Observer's Chair is like it's like the perfect field guide to life and business and unmet expectations and the noise that we talk about in here. And in there, we talk about the comparison trap. And a client of mine sent me a meme the other day that I absolutely loved. And I've been sharing it with so many different people, the principle, where it said, don't compare your insides to my outsides. Really critical piece. And if you look at your habit finder and you see the first two measurements, okay, unconditional and confident, and if those move to the left in your habit finder, then you're going to want to really pay close attention to that comparison trap. You're going to really want to pay extra attention to unmet expectations because they're robbing you of so many other amazing gifts you've got in your habit finder. And if you haven't taken it and met with one of my specialists whose marching orders are, number one, to take care of you, to serve you, to be able to notice you. If you don't want to bring your wall down, no problem. They're not going to force it. They're not a sales team. But if they see value, you recognize value, they will offer to exchange that value. They will create an opportunity for that exchange of value, that sale. But it comes after everything that we teach. It comes after the connection is established. So spend time with one of my Habit Finder specialists if you haven't yet. If you haven't already engaged with us at some level in a group or in one-on-one coaching, right now we're building a lot of groups. So if there are any of you out there that are looking to get into group coaching, which is an opportunity to get personal attention in a small group from me or my dad or both of us, or me and one of my other coaches, or my dad and one of our other coaches, then please message us, let us know. We're putting together some groups specific to teams and organizations right now. You might be included in that. We're also looking to put together some carpool groups. I call them carpool groups because they're a bunch of people headed the same direction that may not necessarily know each other, okay, but are entrepreneurial, because even when we're working with business executives, the majority of people we work with are entrepreneurial in terms of the way they think. So, all right. Tons of great comments in here. Very cool. Yeah, come back and watch it. You got it, Michael. Metacognition, the observer's chair. You can sit in the chair of your unhealthy habits of thinking. The challenge is a lot of us have been in that chair for so long that we actually start hearing our unhealthy habits of thinking in our own voice, in terms of thinking that that's our real voice. There are ways to be able to break that cycle, and they're not easy to do, but that's our expertise, going as far upstream as you can so that you can stop just seeing things playing out in your mind a lot better than they're actually showing up in your current reality. We had a little bit of a diversion today in terms of topic, but I think it was the right place to go. So come back next week for the power session where we're going to talk about the chasm, okay? In terms of, we've got connection, we've got using our mind more constructively. Excuse me. But then it comes time for actual physical creation, the action required, and how many of us are getting ready to get ready. I gave a speech a little while back about standing on the edge of a cliff where I was going to jump 75, 80 feet down. And people get up to a point like that in their life, and it's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, 3 to get ready, 3 to get ready, and we get stuck here. And then we think we need another book, or we need another program, or we need a different opportunity, we need a different relationship. And it starts dictating our circumstances rather than understanding no matter how well prepared you are mentally or emotionally, there's still the jump that is required. We'll talk about that next week more. Thanks so much, everybody, for the time and for being here. And have a great day. We'll see you again soon. Take care.